Mark, thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So did you want to do maybe a brief introduction on who you are and what you do before we get started?
Yeah, sure. So basically, been coaching for, it'll be about 25 years now. So I've been a long time in the game and had great opportunities to work right the way from grassroots all the way to the pro level, and spent a lot of time with a lot of pro athletes. Had a lot of time at the on the ATP and WTA tours, traveling as a traveling coach. I currently work within a school program in Australia, which is doing quite well. So we're out at Maribyrnong College, which is one of the better tennis schools in Australia, achieving some really good results from both the school standpoint and also from individuals doing really well. But yeah, it's been a long time. I'm a coach educator, work within Tennis Australia, have done for over 15 years now, working within coach development, level 1 and 2 courses, delivering those. And then also I've developed a coach education platform called the Tennis Menu. And the Tennis Menu is an online coach platform and player platform to learn all there is around tennis, and giving you resources and tools to be the best player, coach or parent of a tennis player that you can possibly be. So yeah, spent a lot of time in that, and and also work as an AFL coach. So I work in the Australian Football League, coaching a professional football team and working within that organisation as well at the Richmond Tigers. So yeah, it's a pretty full-on life that I live, and pretty exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, and it's great that you've got such good experience in tennis, but also doing other sports. So I'm sure you could learn a lot about AFL and bringing that back into your coaching as well. So I guess before we get started into sort of maybe the parts of an academy development program and that sort of thing, is there anything specifically that you enjoy the most about coaching?
I love the reward for me in coaching is seeing players achieve personal best. Or players or coaches. I think the biggest part about why we do our job is it's a selfless job, and we love seeing others do really well, and that's kind of why we become coaches. It drives it fuels our motivation, it drives our passion, and I think coaching is it's a very rewarding job in that respect. It is quite selfless, so there's not a lot of time for you individually, but I just love the outcomes that the kids get and the players that I'm working with, and to see a smile on their face and when they've worked really hard to achieve an outcome is why we do the job. So I absolutely love doing what I do, and I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And it's a hard job. Obviously, a lot of coaches out there would understand the time constraints and you're working mostly before school, after school a lot of the time, and it is quite challenging and taxing on you individually as a person. But at the same time, it's one of the most fulfilling jobs that you could possibly do, and it's hard to choose a better job from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So yeah, I guess from your experience working in tennis and other sports, what for you are sort of the main things that you find important to developing players? Maybe it's in terms of a program sort of point of view, or even just a player point of view, a coaching point of view. Sort of what things are you sort of looking out for and think are super, super important to develop players to the highest level?
Well, I'm a firm believer of this quote that to become a professional, first you have to be professional. And when we see these players reach the top pinnacle of their game, it doesn't matter if they're a football player, a tennis player, or any athlete around the world. We look at them at the top of their game and we think, oh, they're only doing it because they're there. But I think it's the behaviors that they do that get them to the level that they're at. So, one of the things I instill in my athletes is, you've got to become professional right the way through. And you've got to have the behaviors of warm up, cool down, reflection. You've got to work hard on the person next to you. You've got to be more disciplined than them. You've got to challenge yourself in different ways that make you the best version of yourself in every single minute of every single day. And I've worked and had the pleasure of working with so many people in the sporting industry that have reached the pinnacle, and they've just been, the best workers, the most diligent, the ones that dot the I's, cross the T's, that pay attention to detail. And it's the advice I give to every player I coach. It's the advice I give to every coach I mentor, is that, if you want to be the best, you've got to do more than everybody else. You've got to work harder and smarter. You've got to be more diligent. And yeah, I think it's the old quote of, you've got to be professional before you become professional. And if you can understand that as a player, and even as a coach, I think it holds you in good stead moving forward.
Yeah, I really like that, because I think a lot of kids grow up and sort of think, oh, I'll just start doing that once I'm at a certain level or a certain age. And we've had another podcast in the past, which I always sort of touch back on, with a top New Zealand player that's professional. And, his dad was making him do sort of 5K runs in the morning. And he was saying, oh, no one else is doing that. Why do I have to do it? And the dad was saying, well, that's the reason you're doing it. No one else is doing it. So, yeah, those things you've got to be, I guess, prepared to do behind the scenes when no one's watching, when your coach isn't around, and have that discipline to really, work hard, as you said. So that's, a really good answer. And then in terms of, I guess, of the fitness part of it, so at Elevate, we do, fitness testings, fitness programs and stuff. And something we've found is kids can go a bit up and down with their motivation and consistency. And I guess, would you want to touch on maybe the importance and how that can really translate to on the court? If they're staying really focused and motivated with their fitness programs and whatever else they're doing off the court, I guess from your experience, how does that then benefit them to win more matches?
Yeah, well, I've got an age-old saying that I can only teach you what you're physically capable of doing. And, with coaching stroke production or coaching movement on court, if you're physically not capable of achieving the benchmarks that we set out to achieve, then I actually can't teach you how to play. It's almost impossible, and it limits everything that I can do as a coach. It's like the person who comes to you that, if you're a fitness coach and you've got a person that wants to be a 100-meter sprinter at the Olympic Games, and they say, I want to win a gold medal at the Olympics. That's great. But, no matter what age they are, you don't just get them out there to just run 100-meter sprints every day. Now, if they're not capable physically of having power and strength and getting good starts, so you're working on the technical element, but physically, if they can't do that, we can't expect them to run a 9-second 100-meter sprint. So the biggest thing is that, if you're physically incapable of doing things, then it's going to be very hard for your coach to be able to mold you into the player that you want to become. We have a really big program within our school that requires our players to do, 3, 4, 5 days a week strength and conditioning. I mean, it's the game. The game is about movement. It's about strength. It's a resilience-based game. You're playing for 48, 50 weeks a year, week upon week, tournament after tournament, 6 matches per week. Now, if we can't physically last that distance and back it up from week to week, day to day, then we're actually not able to play this sport at the highest level. So, the fitness component, there's two areas of the game that are most important, is the mindset and the physicality. And if you can't get those two things right, and they're things that you can control and you can do whenever you want them to do at any stage, if you can't work on those two things more than your tennis, then there's a problem, and you're not motivated enough to be the best player you can be. The tennis is a byproduct of what we are physically and mentally.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer, and it is so true. And I think once the kids, I guess anyone at any age sort of understands, when you do put the work in and then you do actually see those results. I guess it's like going to the gym. You do it for 3 months, you see the results, and then you're like, wow. And then that's kind of when you get addicted. It's the first part that can be quite hard. And I guess in tennis, you might not see the results straight away, or it could be a bit up and down for a while. But I guess over time, you just got to trust yourself, trust your parents, trust your coaches that it is the right thing. And, you see all the top athletes in the world, they are athletes, they're probably people that could translate their skills into any other sport, regardless of tennis.
And, the challenge we have this day and age is that we've got a generation, and I'm included in that we all have instant gratification through our phones. If we want to find something, we learn something, we type it into Google, it comes up, it's instant there for us. So, we go to the gym, you won't see the instant results of the strength and what it can do for you. But over time, consistently, if you do it over and over again, what you'll see is that you will improve as an athlete without even having to train any extra on court. The off court stuff will help your on court. And it's not an instant gratification, it's a bit more delayed, but you'll find that the outcomes and the outputs that you'll have are going to be significantly different and so much better if you just understand that the mindset and the physicality are the two areas that you can focus on without a coach, be on your own and actually do the work and get such good benefit from it and good bang for buck.
Yeah, exactly. Could you maybe go through a bit of an example of maybe a top junior you've worked with or a professional, and maybe discuss how much fitness and mindset as well they're doing during the week? Because I think it'd be quite interesting for the kids to sort of understand how much work goes behind just the playing on court as well.
Yeah, so if you're thinking of a training block, most of the pro players are probably doing, I aim between a 45-minute to 1 hour prep session before a hit. So they'll prepare by doing a 45 to 1 hour session of like TheraBand movement, a lot of lateral based stuff because we're 70% of the game's lateral movement. They'll do some core activation, they'll do some mobility work, and they'll do some short, sharp sprinting kind of stuff to get them activated, whatever it might be. They'll then practice for probably 2 hours. They'll come off the court and do a recovery. Firstly, first 20 minutes, get the intake of food. So the nutrition's important. Make sure you're recovering nutrition-wise and then physically. So you're doing your stretch recovery, whatever it might be. Then it's go to the gym for an hour or two, doing your strength and conditioning work, and then having something else to eat after that. And then it'll be practice again for another couple of hours after that. So the day is about 6 to 8 hours long from a pro athlete in a training block. And then you might look at, okay, if I'm a junior athlete, so I've got some top juniors at the moment, a couple hundred in the world ITF, they will do probably about 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of warm up, depending on time constraints with school or whatever else they have, in the same mold as a pro player, but not as in depth. Then they'll practice for a couple of hours and they'll do a recovery for 15, 20 minutes after that. They might go to school and do the same thing in the afternoon, right? So it will vary quite significantly of time, tournament or non-tournament, what phase of your preparation are you in. But, if you're not allocating at least an hour or two a day of strength and conditioning kind of work, whether that be warm-ups, cool downs, activation, strength side of things, conditioning side of things, movement side, then you're falling behind the eight ball. And it's pretty plain and simple. We play a physical game, and if we can't physically withstand the pressures and the challenges that tennis gives us, then we're not going to be able to play the game at the highest level for a long period of time.
Yeah, and I think from a New Zealand point of view, I'm not sure how much you've seen of sort of New Zealand juniors throughout the last 10 years, but looking at our players to players in Australia and overseas, we seem to always lack in the physical part of tennis, like the on-court movement, the physicality, that sort of thing. So I think in New Zealand, if you can get that stuff right, you are going to be, ahead of the game and be able to go overseas and potentially match those players. But at the moment, our top players, winning national titles, they go overseas and they get absolutely thumped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big problem, but it's it's a society problem. So I tell our kids that 99% of the world are going to be average or below average. There's 1% of the world that are extremely successful. Why? Because they're willing to do the extra stuff. Now, you either put yourself in that 99% category or that 1% category. You're either going to stand in the pack or you're going to stand out of the pack. And if you can't understand that as an athlete, that only a small percentage of players actually make it to the top, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. You can understand that, okay, this is why and how I've got to do it. You've got to go away and do extras than everybody else. If someone's doing 100-meter sprints, you do 6. You always do a little bit extra than what they do. They do a 5-minute warm-up, you do a 10-minute warm-up. They do a 10-minute warm-up, you do a 15-minute warm-up. And have that as your benchmark of no one's going to outwork me. And if I can outwork everybody, I've got a good chance.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. And I guess as well, we talk often on our mindset sessions, which an Australian guy actually does, is doing post-match journaling as well. So is that something that your, I guess, juniors do a lot, and something that maybe was, I wouldn't say challenging to do at the start, but I guess it's another thing that maybe most players, or the 99% aren't doing. Yeah. So has that sort of been a benefit to your players to sort of understand those patterns and doing a real reflection on how they're going?
Yeah, reflection's absolutely critical. I think there's two things to reflection. One is don't do it within the first 10 to 15 minutes after you come off the court, because the emotion is so high, and you're going to be writing your reflection from an emotional standpoint. The second thing is we very rarely reflect upon wins. We always reflect upon losses. Now, winning teaches us more than losses do. And people always think it's the other way around, but winning gives us the blueprint to what we've done really well to be successful. losing gives us the blueprint, what we would need to do to fail again. So if you can understand that the winning process and the reflection upon winning is the most critical element of success, and you get a blueprint for winning, then you can replicate that the next time you play. What did I eat before the match? What did I do within the match? What did I do as a preparation? How was my mindset? Create all those winning formulas into a diary, and that becomes your blueprint for winning.
Yeah, I was having a listen to Svitolina's former coach. I can't remember his name, but it was that English guy, and he was saying the same thing about, sticking to a routine that works, and then they were basically doing it every single tournament, following like to the minute, an exact routine. I think it gives the player peace of mind as well, but also just that structure of it's worked before. It gives you that confidence. I think I watched one of your content videos as well about, I think it was one of your juniors serving and talking about sort of, rather than focusing on, what they're doing wrong, focusing on, what are these few things I can do to actually make my serves go in? And that's something I always talk about. But did you want to sort of explain what you meant? Because a lot of people wouldn't have watched that video, but yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about coaching that I find is that coaches always want to gravitate to what's wrong. Players always want to gravitate to what's wrong. Parents want to gravitate to what's wrong. Whenever you are on the court, you actually can't see yourself play. Now, you might know you've made an error. You might know that you've made a mistake here or there. But at the end of the day, you can't see what has actually occurred for you to make that error. So all you've got to focus on is what you need to do to make your ball, or where you need to hit it to make your ball, to make less errors in terms of the match, right? So if you have a focus of what I need to do, not what I don't want to do again, it's like that old phrase of don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. We kind of coach a lot like that, and we play a lot like that. Don't hit the net. Don't miss. Don't make another mistake. Whatever it might be is in our head, and we're almost gravitating and taking our mindset and our actions to something we don't want to do, which ends up happening anyway. We've got to gravitate to what we want to achieve, not what we don't want to achieve. And if we can learn that the brain cannot process the word not, don't do this, don't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a matter of saying, I will do this, I will do that, I will ensure that I do this, and trying to make sure that the mindset determines what the body needs to do in terms of actions. So yeah, that video is a big one that we focus a lot on, is focus on what I want to do, not what I don't want to do. And yeah, it's on our Instagram page of a young boy serving, and he missed a couple of serves, and I just said, okay, we'll focus on the 3 things that make your serve go really well. And he gave me 3 things. He focused on them and served unbelievably well the next serve, and that's kind of the blueprint for success.
Yeah, it's definitely a different mindset. And I guess, do you think it could be similar to some kids maybe fearing or thinking about like not losing rather than that want to win? Is that something you find quite common?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a lot of different players. Like on the tour, it's quite interesting how negative a lot of the pro players actually are. We don't actually see that. But for young juniors out there to understand that all the players on the tour will go through emotions and negativity and fear. Some are motivated by fear. So, as a coach, I don't want to take that motivation out of them, because that is what might drive them to success. Some are motivated to win, which is fine. Everyone's motivated by different stimuli. And as a coach, I have to find out what that button is that I need to press to ensure that my player is motivated by the right areas. So, there's no one cookie cutter approach to mindset. It's about what motivates this player and how do I use that to our ability. So it's, I think fear of losing was what motivated me. Fear of failure is what motivates me every day. I don't want to fail for my family or for my players. I want to make sure that I'm a success. So my fear of failure makes me get to the courts an hour before everybody else. It makes me leave an hour after everybody else to make sure that I'm ticking the box, knowing that I've done everything possible to be successful.
Yeah, that's an awesome an awesome answer. And I guess as well, knowing that look, sort of relating to what you said before about the whole, getting there now early, getting there now late, linking to the players, you've got to have that from the coach as well. I think really important for the coach to also be able to get to understand the kids' motivation and understand sort of what makes them tick, as you said. So I guess with the player point of view, it's really important to find a coach that can know each individual and know how to coach each individual, because you might have 30 kids during the week, but every kid's different. So how do you, I guess, as a coach, sort of, get to know your kids on a more personal level to improve their coaching?
Yeah, I think when you talk about knowing your athlete, I mean, that builds trust, right? The more you know about them, it builds trust. I think the other thing is we as coaches don't do this really well, and I think it's an important part. But to build trust, you need to be vulnerable. Now, as a coach, we don't like to let our guard down because we like to be the power person that's in charge. But as a coach, my biggest takeaway is that I need to be vulnerable first before I can expect my player to be vulnerable with me and talk to me about things that they need help with. And you got to ask questions about them, not about their tennis. I mean, at the end of the day, like, they're human beings. Coach the person, don't coach the player. And if you understand the person more and what makes them tick, you can coach them a lot better and help them out a lot more. And the way they accept information, receive it, the way that they, are motivated or unmotivated. I think you as a coach need to know everything about that player. Ask lots of questions, understand the family, the background, how they're parented, how they're brought up, the relationships at home. And if we can get that better, then we get the relationship between coach and player so much better. And spend time with them. It's not just with them as the tennis player, but them as the player and as the person. And get to understand them from the inside out, not from the outside as a tennis player.
Yeah, I mean, do you find that is a problem with other coaches maybe that I find like here, especially with maybe the older coaches, they're so focused on just improving, a technique with feeding, and it's all just tennis based. There's no personal questions. There's no, watching the matches. It's just sort of, it's very, teacher student. There's no sort of, in between. Is that sort of a thing in Australia, or is that sort of a lot less common?
It's a thing worldwide, for sure. It's something that, the good coaches know that that's not the recipe for success. I always tell my kids, my phone's on. When you're playing a tournament, you want to call me before the match or after the match, I'm here for you. I can't get to every match, and I'm not going to promise that. But what I will be is there for you, and I'll win with you and I'll lose with you. And if you need to cry on the phone, vent to me, that's okay. We'll go through it together. We'll work on it. If you lose, it's not your fault, it's our fault. And we need to work on what needs to happen. And, as a coach, you've got to create the we, not the I. Just because they win, it's not you as the coach. It's not them as the player. It's we did it together. We win and lose together. And it's a common issue worldwide. And we've got to help our athletes get through these challenging times as well. It's a tough gig, and we need to be there for them as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I really like that. We always try and say, winning together and obviously losing together as well. So yeah, that's really awesome. I guess just last sort of question to finish off. If you had any, I guess, advice for an upcoming junior, it can be something you've already talked about or something else that's just on your mind that, would be really helpful for them to sort of, I guess, just keep improving their tennis, and something that you think is just really important.
Yeah. My biggest bit of advice for any player and any coach is that a coach will never, ever make the player, but a coach can break the player. So if you're a coach, that's a really big formula for you to work with. If you're an athlete, understand that the coach is not going to make you. The program makes you. Now, whatever your program looks like, how many hours a week you do, your tournaments that you play per year, like hours on court per week. If you're a 12-year-old, you want roughly 12 hours on court a week. You want about 6 hours off court of training a week as a minimum. You want to play about 25 to 30 tournaments a year, roughly about 80 to 100 matches a year. You want to challenge yourself at the highest level of play you possibly can to learn from the best players that can teach you the way to play. The program that you design around yourself is what is going to make you over a long period of time. Coaches cannot make you. One bit of advice does not make you the player. It's about taking that advice and going and working with it. And if you're a player, work harder than everybody around you. Do more than they do. Again, put yourself in that 1% of successful people around the world. Separate yourself from the pack and be different. Yes, it's not the best thing from a peer standpoint, and people tend to laugh at those people that stand out. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be laughing at the end of the day, and when you succeed and they don't. So never worry about what people think of you. Just be yourself. Be a hard worker. Love what you do. Be passionate about it. Give it everything you've got. And always judge yourself on the effort. If you give 100% effort and it still isn't good enough, that's okay, as long as you're satisfied within yourself that you've given all you've got. So yeah, good luck to all those players out there. It's a tough game, but it's a game that is so rewarding and something that has given me a life and given me a career. And, I wouldn't have done anything different if I had my choice again.
Awesome. That's a really informative answer, covering lots of different things. So yeah, thanks so much for jumping on. I think it's a really great podcast because we just covered so many different topics. So I'd really suggest parents and players to maybe even go back and watch it again or take some notes, pause anything. There's also some really good quotes in there as well. So yeah, thanks, Mark, for jumping on. Really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime. Thanks for having me.